Hi, I'm Joshua Bashand, and I'm the student minister at Walker Christian Church in Walker, Missouri. And basically what I do is I work with kindergarten through 12th graders, helping disciple them and show them who Jesus is and how to grow closer with him and have a deeper relationship with him. Now, there's this game, because I'm a student minister, that we love to play called Bigger or Better. My students love it, and the basic idea of it is you start with a paperclip. And then you take that paperclip and you try to trade it and try to get the biggest or the best thing by the end of the night. And so you go house to house and start with paperclip, then you get a pen. And my students have all worked up to these amazing things, like one time they brought home a couch. My brother-in-law, one time they brought home a flock of ducks. My brother-in-law played this game personally, and starting with the paperclip, he traded all the way up to a working, running vehicle. It's crazy what you can do in this game. And today what we're going to be talking about is this idea of trading up. About trading up things in our lives for something that's bigger or better. And one way that we're going to help to explain this is we're going to look at the life of a guy named Moses. Now, Moses had probably one of the most interesting and eccentric lives in all of the people throughout Scripture. You see, he had a really exciting childhood. When he was a child, the Pharaoh was worried. And the Pharaoh of Egypt was worried that the Israelites were growing too big and that they were going to make an army big enough to take him over. And so what he decided to do was eliminate all of the Israelite males. He issued a decree that any child, male 2 years or younger, was to be taken and thrown in the Nile River and killed. And the problem for Moses was, at this time, he was an Israelite. And so he fit under this decree. And so his mom did everything she could to protect him. She hid him for as long as she could, but eventually it just became too hard, and she couldn't do it anymore. And so she did the only thing that she knew to do to give her son a chance, and that was to take him and put him in a basket that floated and to put him in the river, to put her trust in God's hands. As many as you guys know, that basket floated down the river, and Pharaoh's daughter ended up finding that and taking them in as her own. Moses, though, had an interesting childhood because he had everything he ever wanted. He grew up with the best education, with the best food, with the best everything, but had to sit and watch as his people were beaten and mocked and tormented and forced into slavery for years and years and years. And eventually, one day, Moses was walking along doing his own thing, and a soldier was abusing an Israelite. And Moses, it had to just been the years of pent-up anger and frustration. It finally just all snapped that day. And Moses attacked that guard, and he killed him. And the culture at that time was a one-for-one culture, an eye for an eye. And so, since Moses killed someone, he figured his punishment was probably going to be death. And so he did the only thing that he knew to do. He ran, and he hid. And probably for the first time in his life that he could remember, Moses was unsure what to do. He was afraid, and he was alone. And sometimes, guys, in our lives, we don't know where we belong. Sometimes in our lives, we don't know who our true friends are. Sometimes in life, we don't know why algebra is so hard. Okay, I know why it is. It's because that letters belong in the alphabet and numbers belong in math problems, but that's another discussion for another time. Sometimes we wander through life completely lost, without direction, and without hope. And that's where Moses was. He was wandering around, unsure of where he was going to go, what he was going to do. Life, he wasn't sure what was going to be next for him. And so in his life, he ended up gaining some things. He did something nice for some ladies, and he ended up getting a wife out of the deal. And so that's just a little tip for all you men folk out there. If you do nice things, you might get a wife. And then Moses started living his life, and he had a wife, and he had some kids. And then one day he happened upon a burning bush. Well, I take that back. You see, the bush was on fire, but it wasn't actually burning. It wasn't disintegrating in any way. And God was within that bush, and he wanted to spark up a conversation with Moses. Okay, these are the jokes here, I apologize. But God wanted to speak to Moses, and he told Moses that I have this plan for you. I want you to go and to free my people. But Moses wasn't so sure. Actually, I'd like to read from you from Exodus chapter 4, Moses' 3 excuses. In verse 1, he says, "What if they don't trust me? What if they don't listen to me? What if they don't listen to a single word I say? They're more likely to reply, 'The Eternal has not revealed himself to you.'" In verse 10, he says, "Please, Lord, I am not a talented speaker. I've never been good with words. I wasn't when I was younger, and I haven't gotten any better since you revealed yourself to me. I stutter and I stammer, and my words, they get all twisted." In verse 13, he says, "Please, Lord, I beg you to send your message through someone else." Through anyone else. And like Moses, most of us in life don't think we're good enough. You see, we sit and we think we're not the smartest. There's someone else smarter than me. I'm not the best. There's someone better than me. You know, in Star Wars, it's said that there's always a bigger fish. And generally, that's true. There is typically someone better than you at what you do than yourself. But the thing about that is, God doesn't want the best. He doesn't always call the most qualified person. He just wants you. Because you have a certain set of experiences and talents and abilities that God can best use through you. And so God has a plan for Moses, and he replies to Moses with this: "Who is it that gives a person a mouth? Who determines whether one person speaks and another doesn't? Why is it that one person hears and another doesn't? And why can one person see and another doesn't? Isn't it because of me, the Eternal? You know it is. Go now, and I will be there to give you the words to speak. I will tell you what to say." And what God does is he reminds Moses in this moment that I made you. That through me, nothing is impossible, that I can make you do great things. And so I want to challenge you with 3 things that you can do to trade up to something better in your life. And the first thing you have to do is you need to trade up your insecurities for some self-worth. Okay? Because so many times in our lives, there are things that we're bad at. There are things we struggle with. There are things that just don't work out very well for us. But God isn't looking for someone that's perfect. God isn't looking for someone that has it all figured out. He wants you, even in your insecurity and even in your doubts, to step up and to do great things. Because so often, guys, it's through our weaknesses that God is able to show his strengths. We can't let one mistake be our defining characteristic. Moses just could have let that one moment in his life where he lashed out in anger define him with this title of killer, of murderer for the rest of his life. But instead, he was able to trade up and do the things that God wanted him to do. The second thing that you need to do is you need to trade in the bad so that you can experience the good. Now, some of you may have been wondering, like, why am I sitting on this car and why is this Jeep right here? And, well, the reason for this is I got to trade up. Okay, and some of you are looking at this and you're kind of wondering, how did this go about? Which one's the trade up? And I started with this car. I got this car when I was 16 years old, and I drove it clear up. I just turned 25 the other day, and this has been my main car for the last 9 years. But recently, I was able to purchase this Jeep. And for you car people, a lot of you can look at this and figure out the trade up. But for me, this is a trade up because it has 4-wheel drive. Because I was able to put a treadmill and a ladder and a table, and I've been able to haul stuff. The other day we had an ice storm, and I was able to take that out on the ice and not slip around at all. I can't tell you how many times I've wound up in ditches driving on ice in this car. That it was a trade-up. And it was really funny because I called my insurance, and I had to add the Jeep onto the insurance, and they said, well, tell us the year of the new car you bought. I said, well, it's a 95. And they said, no, the new car you bought. Not the old car that you already have. I said, no, this is the new car I bought. It's a 95 Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I'm excited to drive it. I'm ready to use it. And so when you start trading up things in your life, it's not going to always make sense to people. That people are going to look at you and go, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Aren't you comfortable with the life you have now? If you do this, things may not work out in a good way. And the thing is, guys, when you start trading up the bad for the good in your life, God is going to be able to do amazing things through you. Like in Moses' life, he ended up trading the bad of his sin. Instead of letting that define him and destroy him, he gave it up to God and let God use him for better things, for greater things. And so my challenge to you is that God can't steer a parked car. You see, we have to keep moving. We have to continue growing and strengthening our relationship with Jesus. And so don't just stop. Don't just coast. Instead, start trading up the bad things in your life so that God can give you something better. Which leads me to this. The third thing that you need to trade up is that you need to trade up the good for the great. And this kind of goes back to the whole coasting and being content thing, but honestly, God's not done with you yet. God has so many more things that he wants to do for you that some of us in life, we just get to this point to where we plateau and we stop and we're comfortable and things are going okay and you know, we can kind of just make it. And the thing is, when we stop giving others an opportunity to see Christ through us. We stop giving others an opportunity as they come to church to feel the excitement and the love and the peace that God can bring into their lives. We don't want to stop. We want to keep forwarding on the amazing message of Jesus Christ. In his book, Love Does, Bob Goff shares this. He said, there's a passage in the Bible about a young guy who had a lot of money and possessions. He was a good guy too. Jesus told this guy that if he really wanted to know God, he needed to sell all of his possessions and follow him. The man was sad about the exchange and he chose to keep his stuff rather than trade up and follow Jesus. Now, Jesus didn't have this conversation to shame the young man, but rather to challenge him. To challenge his good and his comfortable, to challenge him to leave good behind, experience the great. The challenge is the same for us, whether or not we are willing to give up all that we have to follow him to know God. He asks, are you willing to trade up? It's a question worth asking because the answer will shape our lives one way or another. You see, Jesus plays the real game of bigger or better with us. And it isn't about money and it isn't about possessions. Rather, it's about us giving up something that has up until now defined us. Jesus asks us all, will you take what you think defines you and leave it behind and let me define who you are instead? And so when we get our security from Christ, we no longer have to look around to other things in the world and look to them for our value, for our worth. Rather than God gives us everything that we need. If we trade up our sin and we trade up our bad and we trade up our good, God can do amazing things through you. But it comes back to you. What are you willing to trade up? What are you willing to give up so that God can do amazing things through you? Is there sin in your life that you just need to let go? Are there things that you're holding on to for the sake of comfort that you need to let go? It's not my question to answer, it's yours. And so, pray. Seek out God's guidance. What do you need to trade up so that God can do amazing things through you?